Could friendship be radical? Could it be a bond between two persons that transcends worldly mutual benefit? For English philosopher Mary Astell, it certainly was. Astell's focus on women's friendship went hand in hand with her proposal that women ought to have access to an education just as men, but in a women-only monastery. It is in this space, thought Astell, that friendship and the self could truly thrive, and we will spend some time exploring these ideas on From What We've Gathered with Dani Nelson and Kylie Shahar.
I prefer a slide. Turbulent or gentle waters, let's go for a ride.
This is how you know there's a sound producer in the room.
You should definitely leave that in. So, Dani, I have a question for you.
Let's hear it.
When you think of friendship, what comes to mind? When you think of friends, what do you think of?
Well, first you, Kylie,
Oh.
obviously.
Right. That was the right answer.
We're bringing these virtues together. And you're a lady, which means you can be my friend, according to Mary Astell.
We've satisfied those conditions.
Yep.
Good.
When I think of a friend, I think of my most casual moments where I am my most kind of slobbery self.
Absolutely.
A total like in the couch.
Absolutely.
I'm not wearing like my best outfit. Mm-hmm. Maybe not even a bra.
Mm-hmm. The hair has not been washed.
And we're just watching a show. Yeah. We may be playing on our phones, but we're just like together in that space. Totally. Parallel play is what they started,
if you will,
for the children, for those who know about the hip child psychology these days. Parallel play. So I think that those kinds of just like unromanticized whatever. Yeah. What do you think of friends?
Yeah, I totally agree, right? Like what with the sort of like range of things, like person that you could just be, just vegetate next to. I guess you could call that parallel play. Parallel paralysis.
Recreational paralysis.
Recreational paralysis. It's so necessary sometimes.
Absolutely.
And you like the friend is the person that, can just hang out with you and you can totally be yourself and you don't feel like, oh, you've got a host or, put on some extracurricular, whatever. But then also like on the other side of things, a friend is someone you can go camping with and be out there in the woods with nothing else to occupy your mind or your time, but that person or whoever else is there with you.
I can see you're not the person gathering the firewood. If you're like, there's nothing to do.
There's nothing to do, right? Right, exactly.
There's no jobs here. Meanwhile, someone's like putting up a tent, putting out your things,
trying to like
your bag.
Yeah, put the food sack over the tree so that the bears don't kill us at night.
You're just gazing upon a flower.
Yeah,
nothing.
This is nice. Yeah, leisurely activity, huh?
Yeah. So I think that these things, but
yeah,
I mean, I think Mary Astell, who we're talking about today, she would agree that these are things that could happen with friends, but there's a whole other side of it, which is this intellectual development that would exist, or not even development, but desire. There's, a common bond is the growth of your mind.
Totally. There's
also
this whole other dimension to it, like you say, right? It's not like a rejection of, leisurely activities or things that you enjoy doing together. It's just that's not the whole picture because, as you say, right, for Astell, it's like this intellectual element to it, this spiritual element to it, really, where she's thinking about friendship as this bond with another person whom you love, right? It's not just like whoever, but this person that with whom you can intellectually and morally grow together and importantly through that friendship. And so that's sort of one sense in which it's kind of this spiritual bond, not just a bond grounded in mutual benefit or pleasure, delight. Like, these are all great things, as we've just noted. Parallel play.
Right, absolutely.
Camping, hiking mountains.
You mean gazing upon the
gazing
flowers?
upon the flowers while other people do all the
Labor.
work. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a selflessness to it. She really believed
Yes.
that friendship was a selfless endeavor.
Yeah.
It was going outside of what you might benefit from another person. For instance, your parents, you've benefited from them by them bringing you into existence. Your siblings, they have benefited from you through your witty jokes and amazing personality.
Correct.
But your friends, you've chosen each other to kind of provide this almost familial aspect to, where it's not only about me being safe or happy or intellectually thriving. It is for me to also experience that with and for a friend. In any circumstance, when you're with that true friend, which would be a female,
Yes.
in her mind, in her mind, these are specifically friendships between two women, because she didn't believe that men and women could be friends.
Yeah. And why is that?
She has this really great example where her example of why men and women in her time. So she was sort of upper middle class, right? I think her dad was a merchant kind of business guy. So he wasn't necessarily a part of the aristocracy, but they had money. So she came, so she already had a certain amount of education that was provided for her that could exist, that maybe other people wouldn't have. But also what her lifestyle was going to like parties,
Must
teas.
be nice.
Yeah. She had like a social, she wasn't laboring. She wasn't
Right.
a woman who was like,
Yes.
I was married when I was 17 and now I'm dishwashing and laundering. She was not of that social class. And so, when she's in these aspects, when she discusses how men and women can't be friends, her example is she'll arrive at a party and the first thing that a gentleman she's acquainted with might be is making a remark on how nice her shoes match her dress. And then within the hour, they might be in conversation and he might be condemning her for only caring about fashion. And so she's just like this, the male concept of what they are allowed to do as women, and their experience of being a woman in the early 1700s, or, the time period that she lived in, they had very limited things they were allowed to publicly care about.
Yeah.
And fashion was one of them.
Right.
So she was like, so both to be complimented and put on a pedestal of her like ability to be fashionable, and then later kind of like insulted to being like, well, the only thing you think about
Right.
is what you're going to wear. And you're like,
Yeah.
for her, she's like, oh, is that all the only thing I think about?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
also, can you even understand the contradiction
Right. Yeah.
of the way that you talk to us as women?
Right.
All
She's
of
thinking
us.
like this. It's so ridiculous that, that someone should at the same time compliment her for something that she's socialized to do, right? Or like that custom, as she would call it, has it, custom has made it such that women are taught to only care about their appearance, because like your appearance is what's gonna help you get a husband and yada yada yada, and like that's your currency, right? So like society has taught her, and all women, to care only about their appearances, and then at the same time she's ridiculed for caring about her appearance. So she's thinking, how can we live in a society and grow as individuals, like become better people? Women is what she's thinking. How can women become better people in a society that puts these constraints on them, kind of fits them into a box, says these are the things that you should care about. These are the goods, education, that you don't have access to.
Right.
And then it's also your fault when you only care about your appearance. It's also your fault when you act immorally, despite not having the access to all of the books and resources of the learned to think about virtue and morality and spirituality and things that go beyond, your appearance. She's like, we don't have access to these things. We're put into this box where we're only allowed to and conditioned to only care about this small subset of things. And it's all the worse for our spiritual growth and betterment and for things that truly matter in this world, because we're blocked from having access to any of the things that could awaken this to us.
Yeah. And just to set the scene for you. So she was seen as this great wit of her time, like Oscar Wilde level. Like, she's invited to all the parties because she's going to be up to something. She's going to say something. She's going to have a quirky thought on things. And she was so because she was in this upper middle class, outside of the aristocracy kind of thing, she was also kind of allowed to have this intellectual side to her that was not preventative of what people might expect of someone who has a title or whatever might be. And so she is going into these situations where she is being invited specifically to have these kinds of opinions. Yeah. And part of the reason everybody knows her and where this story comes from about this kind of idea of the man being like, nice shoes, but then also being like, oh, you can't even leave the house without finding your fanciest shoes. You're like, which one? Yeah. Which one am I supposed to do? Right. So her wit was so well respected, but what she was trying to convey to women is not only can we be friends, but like women can have the most sanctimonious of bonds. Yeah. And that is both through God and through their shared experience as women. But her big idea was the best way to do this was dun dun dun,
a single-sex monastery.
Ladies only.
And the way that this idea was propagated during Astell's time was through her anonymous publication of 2 pamphlets. Thanks, emerging printing press technology. And it was called A Serious Proposal to the Ladies. Now, like, what the heck is she proposing? Well, her main, the primary aim of these pamphlets was to argue that women are just as rationally capable as men, and so should also have access to an education. And just as you say, the best way to do this is a single-sex monastery.
Yep. Summer camp. In her mind, although this monastery would be religious somewhat because she loved God.
Yes.
There's every bit of her writing is like,
yes,
it's cool to think, but also,
yes,
you better thank God that you can do that.
Right.
Like, that was her big G, God.
Yeah.
She definitely was into that. But her monastery, her idea is it's like a college.
Yep.
So this is a concept where there's all of these men-only colleges, and that's existed for thousands of years before her and will continue for hundreds of years after her. I mean, in the 20th century, there were still female physicists who had to learn out in the hallways of Oxford or whatever.
Because they weren't allowed into the classroom.
There were not even female bathrooms or any, like there's all sorts of things like that. That are going on even into the 20th century. So in her mind, this is how you would bring about an intellectual population with female ideas.
Yes.
Because so far in her time, the world had been deprived of great female thinkers.
Right.
Because there was no place for them to thrive.
Right.
There was no place for them to become educated. Right. There was no place for them to be able to discuss things without all these male-created caveats of having to explain yourself or like...
Right. It was like...
You have to earn.
Yeah. Or, right. So for like a lot of women in the period, they just they didn't have access to formal education unless, of course, you were of a very high socioeconomic status and you could get private tutors. And so you could, right, so some of those women did have access to a somewhat formal education. But that didn't mean that women weren't trying to learn how to read on their own. Many women were still so very successful and, you know, demonstrated a lot of grit and perseverance in spite of these circumstances. So despite not having access to a formal education, there were plenty of women, Mary Astell's one of them, who were very intelligent and who aimed to contribute to society. And Mary Astell argues, just as you say, that if you deprive half of the population of a formal or deprive them of any access to some kind of education, you're going to miss out on a lot of good ideas. That's half of the population.
That's half the population that could be considering these things from the point of view of a mother.
Exactly.
A sister.
Exactly.
Just female being.
Yes.
You know,
totally.
with all of the things that we deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's thinking that women ought to be educated just as well as men. But the best way to do this is in a women's only college, right? She doesn't say college.
She doesn't. She says monastery.
She says monastery. Yeah. But another way of thinking about this is like a religious retreat, retreating from society, right? Retreating from the society that tells women that they should only care about their appearances, that they should only focus on what they wear.
The marriage market. Only focus on
who exactly.
Who are you going to marry?
Who's going to court you?
Yep.
And she thinks this is not good for women because women have just as rationally capable of an intellect as men. Women are also the subjects of virtue. Women have got to learn how to be virtuous, and you can't do that without an education. Women have got to learn, you know, like you say too, pointing out that this is just in the throes of the Enlightenment period, where also people are focusing on reading scripture for themselves, understanding scripture for themselves, not just taking for true what your religious leaders tell you, right? Not just accepting dogmatic church doctrine, right? But actually reading scripture for yourself and coming to form your own understanding, a first kind of personal, you know, engagement with this stuff, instead of just like playing a game of telephone and relying on someone else to tell you the truths of the Bible and, you know, the truths that'll get you to salvation.
Yeah.
These people are thinking, you've got to do it for yourself. And so Astell's thinking women too have to be able to do this for themselves. And once again, the best way to do this is away from society, away from the society that puts them in a box that says, these are the things you should care about, and these are the options that are available to you. She's thinking there's got to be something else. Women have got to be able to not only, you know, understand scripture, but letters and sciences and math. And right in the mix of all of this is friendship.
It's friendship.
It's just as important, and it's just as sacred as a bond as any other marriage, really, is what she's thinking.
Yep. And in some ways, she's like, marriage actually in some ways detracts from that. But she also, because she is such a, you know, because she is so religious and that part of things, she's not against marriage. She's like, it says in Christian doctrine that marriage is the most sacred relationship you could have under God. So she's not against people, but she's saying, how fruitful of a marriage or a partnership can you be in if you are committed to servitude? Because her most famous quote is, if all men are born free, how are all women born as slaves? And that's like her most famous kind of we think of her as the first English feminist, although she would be
Yeah.
appalled. She would be like, I'm a monarchist.
Yeah.
She's like, I mean, she might in some circumstances, but there's all these things
Totally.
that we may think of modern feminists that would be like, that's not her
Very
jam.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, but she lives in a different time.
Absolutely.
But she has that really excellent way of being like, hey, if we can retreat and become our fullest, noblest, most virtuous selves, that only makes us better marriage material.
Yes.
And the other thing about the monastery, which she saw as you could be there for a lifetime. She did not see, it's not like a university where you're like, I'm signing up for 4 years of classes.
Right.
And at the end, I'll have a career.
Right.
This is like what many academics, it is a place to go and be as long as you are thriving there. So it might, in her mind, this monastery, which never, spoiler alert, it never happens.
I know. So
It doesn't.
sad.
She is maybe she
So
is able to
sad.
make it happen.
Spoiler alert. Everyone's like, okay, we'll stop listening now. It didn't happen. This isn't worth it.
They're like 250 years later, too soon. But so she thought this could be a lifetime for her and her imaginings. I think if let's say she saw herself as sort of the dean of students or whatever, this would be her lifetime endeavor.
Yeah.
She was definitely not thinking about marriage. I don't think she was even considering it for herself.
Yeah.
She was like, I am going to have an intellectual life, and what that means is I can never commit to the servitude of marriage.
Right.
Like it's just not in the cards for what I
Right.
want to do with my life.
Right.
So when you go to these places, just as much as the intellectual endeavor, because it is not for a career, because again, these are women, they're never going to, it is the friendships that are the true kind of exit, like the thing you're taking as you exit, your
Yes.
diploma, if you will, are these relationships that you've created with other women that now enable you to be a higher intellectual being.
Right. Yeah.
Because you've had these discussions, understanding,
Right. And like here, if we were talking about parallel play at the beginning, parallel self-growth.
Oh, right.
Like that's what one of the, outcomes, that's not the way that she would put it, right? But that's kind of one of the outcomes of female friendship is like self-growth because, and then these are like 2 features maybe of friendship that we should touch on, is because in these friendships, Astell thinks one important role that your friend has or that you have in relation to your friend is the role of admonishment, is what she calls it, right? So, let's say your friend does something, I don't know, a little sketchy, or does acts maybe out of character, or behaves in a way that is just not conducive to their overall well-being or self-growth or spiritual or intellectual development. It's the role of our friends to tell us that kind of stuff, to offer us that kind of critical sort of honest but kind feedback and say, hey, the way that maybe that you reacted in that situation when this and that happened, it seemed a little bit out of character for you, right? And now let's talk about it. Or maybe it's not so much something that you need to work through, but it's just, right, something to point out to your friend that, I don't think that was right, or I don't think that you should have done that, or whatever it is. You of course ought to deliver it kindly, but honestly,
Right.
And that can be a difficult thing to do, even in the truest friendships, right? Like that's a hard thing to do, but Astell sees it as an integral part of friendship because that's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we develop as individuals, is we hear feedback from people who love us, right? It's not flippant or coming from a bad place, but it is in fact coming from the best sort of place.
And believe me, I don't want it for my husband. So I'd much rather I'd much rather it for my friends. But yeah, like who else would you get that kind of feedback from?
Right.
And especially if you are in a case where, I mean, there are plenty of times where someone might give you feedback and you're like, well, they're just too dumb.
Right.
They're dumb.
Yeah.
But if you were in this,
Yes.
this, like you were saying, this parallel kind of like you're growing intellectually, emotionally, all these things together, hearing that from someone who is in that shared experience with you, it can be more reflective and enriching
Absolutely.
and thoughtful
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're perfect in every way, so we'll
We
never
don't need
know
to do that.
We won't know this.
You don't have to do
experience.
that. Yeah.
Admonishment?
No.
Never.
Not for you. And the other thing is, and this kind of also came up earlier, right? The other feature of friendship that seems integral to its contributing to our flourishing is that for Astell, friendship is selfless, right?
Absolutely.
Friendship is selfless. And so in understanding that, maybe we can think about some examples. Like what is an act or an action that looks selfless in friendship?
Right. And okay. So very like easy off the cuff thing.
Yeah.
Rides to the airport.
Oh, yeah.
You would not, if it was just an acquaintance, you would probably be like, get a ride. Here's a shuttle that runs every hour from the whatever. I'll see you when you get here. I'll pick you up at the wherever they drop you off.
Right.
Kind of thing. If it's a business do you have a car rental? Here's my address.
Right.
But if it's your friend, you're going to be like, okay, I got to move some meetings around. I'm giving up half of my day of whatever I might else be doing. Yeah. And so I think that's something you might do that is in a way selfless, because you're like, this is to save them from having to do the extra work, pay the extra costs, whatever, spend time in a vehicle with strangers. Yeah. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to have that together.
Yeah.
And it's not a quid pro quo. It's not I'm picking them up because they pick me up. And maybe that exists for other people. Maybe you have that relationship with some of those acquaintances or colleagues or whatever. But in a friendship, it would never cross your mind to think,
well, what am I going to get out of it?
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah.
You better have brought me something.
Yeah. I expect brownies and cookies.
Or if you've been in a foreign destination, diamonds.
Yeah, that works too.
Like just whatever precious gem is from the area they're coming from.
Exactly.
So that would be like a low kind of like, this is an easy example of selflessness. Yeah. But what are maybe bigger things?
Like, suppose your friend's going through a tough time and they just need to talk it out and they really need to vent it out. But you're kind of preoccupied. You're in fact quite busy and you've got a lot on your plate, or you're totally exhausted after long day, long week, etc. And your friend needs to talk. And in fact, what you'd rather be doing and what you have been doing is staring out into the deep space and depths of the corners of your house in a blank stare, just completely, your last two brain cells are trying to fight for existence and you don't really want to do anything, but you pick up the phone and you call
because
your friend.
Like, oh, this is my friend.
Yeah. I'm gonna it doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit my delight or my, it doesn't bring me any, maybe it brings me some sense of joy or fulfillment to know that I'm showing up for my friend, but it doesn't benefit me. But doesn't matter, right? You do that selfless act.
Yep.
Right. And then I don't know, you could think of other really extreme cases where, your friend is just really down and out. Something really terrible has happened, or maybe not even so terrible, right? But they've gotten a flat tire on the highway at 1:00 in the morning and they call you and they need a ride because who knows about AAA, whatever.
Right.
But they give you a call and it's 1:00 in the morning.
You're going to do it.
You're going to get up out of bed and you're going to go pick them up on Highway 85, wherever they are, because that's your friend.
And I have a good example of even more importantly when it's a female friend, when it's female to female.
Yes.
There are things like you never leave your friend at the bar.
Absolutely.
Even if you're a person who loves to ghost.
Yeah.
And you're like, I
Right.
just know my bed is calling me and it is time for
Right.
me to slip away.
Yes.
If you went there with another female,
Yes.
you are either not leaving
Yes.
or you were dragging
Taking
them
her
away with you.
Exactly.
Like, those are your two options
Absolutely.
of when you are out and about. And that is a selfless, you're like,
Yeah.
have you felt my pillows?
Yeah.
They're so soft.
Right.
They want my head on them so bad.
Exactly.
Okay, so we like to kind of have an applied philosophy.
Yeah.
So for our applied philosophy, we had talked about this idea of a friend of benevolence.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes back to the idea of selflessness. What we're proposing as a thought experiment or as an actually doing, so that you can actually take some of this philosophy and do it. Take some time this week and do something for a friend that is completely selfless.
You don't have to give them $10,000.
But you could.
But you could if you have the means. But yeah, just do something.
I am accepting friendships at
we'll
the
put
price
our
of
Venmo QR code if you're feeling
Socials.
giving. Yeah.
But no, this friendship of benevolence, which we talked about so like earlier with Mary Astell, like her friends being her benefactors were one of the ways that she was able to be successful.
Yeah.
So when we talk about doing something selfless or being a friend of benevolence, it doesn't have to be being a benefactor, although it could.
Right.
If your friend is an artist and you've never bought one of their
Right.
art pieces, support them as an artist
Yeah.
and buy one of their art pieces instead of being like, when are you going to make one for me for free? It's like, understand that's their business or their whatever, you know, and
Totally.
buy one if you can. Also, you can also just be like, I'm going to come over and cook you dinner.
Right.
I know you've been stressed recently.
Right.
And I'm going to
Yes.
cook dinner for you and your whole family so
Yeah.
you don't have to you don't have to spend the mental energy considering the groceries. I'm just going to pick up I'm showing up, dinner for 5 because I'm inviting myself.
You must. Exactly.
I'm also providing the entertainment unasked for.
You're like, I'm doing karaoke. Everyone's like, oh, no, that's okay. We'll starve tonight.
Just me by myself. No one else. There's no time for anyone else to do any songs. So hope you don't mind. But what might you do? Like, what would be another idea of ways to just be selfless or a benevolent friend with intention, an intentional piece of benevolence?
Yeah, I guess like you could suppose your friend is like a gardener. You could say, you know what? I know you hate picking the weeds. Why don't I come over this weekend? We can together, or I'll just pick. Well, that would be less fun. You should
It'd be less
invite-
fun, but you could
you
do
could
it
do that.
just to be outside.
Just to be
and in the
outside.
bed.
Yeah.
I
You
will
could-
accept,
yeah.
Kylie. You're welcome to come.
I will. Now that I'm going to reveal this, you're definitely going to. I do quite enjoy pulling weeds.
Excellent. I have unlimited. Unlimited. So try and go out and do that this week. And if you don't have the time or space or anything like that, even just as a thought experience, think about times in your life when you've had friends
Yeah.
show you that sort of generosity
Yes.
to you and how important that was for your development as a
Right.
human being,
Right.
emotionally, intellectually,
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
So do you want to end with this quote?
For certainly there cannot be a higher pleasure than to think we love and are beloved by the most amiable and best being. Mary Astell. Thank you so much to Sam Fisher for our music, to Tyler Olson for our brainstorm, coordinating, production, and to our listener.
And to you, Kylie, for being such a good human being and friend.
And to you, Danny, for letting me pull your weeds. And for being such a wonderful friend.
Here for you, lady. Go check us out on our socials. Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky,
Do it.
X.
Do it. Do it. It's a threat.
Do it. Bye, all.
Bye.